Welcome to Eagle City Multifamily, where we share how you can get involved in apartment investing. But before we get into it, this is not legal advice or financial advice. It is simply professionals sharing their experience and what they done to get started in apartment investing. Today, I have an awesome guest, Abbas Mohammed.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that. I'm excited.
Let's have some fun with this. So,
Let's do it.
Abbas, would you mind sharing with the audience how you got started in apartments, your background, maybe before apartment investing,
Mhm.
and
Sure.
how available it is to people?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'll share with you my background and how I got into real estate and then eventually transitioned into multifamily. So originally I was born in Iraq, growing up. We didn't have a lot of money. I remember my family was so poor to the point where, we slept on concrete because we couldn't afford to buy beds. And so, always hated that growing up. And then after the war, we lost our house and we kept moving from one place to the other just to kind of survive. And then eventually we moved out to Syria back when I was 9 years old. We lived in Syria for a couple of years, literally seven people in like a 800 square foot apartment. So it was pretty bad out there, but eventually we ended up coming over to the US when I was 11. And we had housing assistance, we had food stamps, every welfare program you could imagine growing up, right? By the time I was 18, I was going to college and I was a used car salesman at the time. And I just kind of felt sick of it. I'm like, you know what? There has to be a better way because I always saw my family struggle financially. I didn't want that to happen for the rest of my life. I wanted to find a way to help them out and change our financial situation. So I was like, you know what? Selling cars and going to college isn't going to be it. I have to find a different way to do that. And so I decided at the time, I looked at every different opportunity that I could at the time, and I realized that most millionaires are made in real estate. So I was like, okay, well, I don't need to be the smartest guy in the room. I'm not going to go overthink this. Most millionaires are in real estate. I'm going to go into real estate. And so I got my real estate license when I was 18 because that's the only thing I could afford. In fact, I literally couldn't afford it. I had a credit card, and so I got my license on a credit card. So I did that, and I thought it was going to be easy. I thought, look, I get in this business. I live in California. If I sell a house, it's $30,000, right, in commissions. And so, I went in and I was super optimistic. And I ended up spending the first 3 months knocking on hundreds of doors a day, literally for 3 months. I didn't get a single transaction out of that. So then my credit card tapped out. I spent it all and I had to go back to my job, which I hated, the car sales job, right? So I went back and as I was selling cars, I was like, listen, I could either give up on my dream of being in real estate or I could just figure out a different way to make it work. And so I noticed there were a lot of times where I just didn't have a customer. I wasn't selling a car. So I decided I would start cold calling at the same time. So I literally had two headsets on. Each headset was connected to three lines, three phones dialing, and I was dialing like a machine. Sometimes I would dial out of the bathrooms. Sometimes I dial out of the rooftop. I did that for 9 more months before I finally got my first transaction. It took me a full year to just do one deal. So I got my first deal. I was super excited, paid off all my debt. And then from there on, I got a second deal a month later, then a third, a fourth. And then within a year of afterwards, I became one of the top agents in the Bay Area. I was 20 years old at the time or 21. I was making about 350, 400,000 in net earnings. And so to me, that was huge because it was more money than all my family had made in a year combined ever. Right. And so I was super excited about that. But at the same time, I felt like I could do more. And so then I started looking at some of the top businesses in the world. I realized they have systems and they have people. Later on, I also discovered that they all have good data. So systems, people, and data. And so I started learning how to hire people. I started learning how to delegate. I started learning how to manage. And so then I started hiring virtual assistants. So in 2020, while everyone was shutting down and ramping down their businesses, I went all in on hiring because to me that was the best opportunity to grow. I'm like, look, everybody else is contracting, so I'm gonna expand it this time. And so I hired 12 full-time virtual assistants by the end of that year. I tripled my business profits, and then in 2021. We went from having 12 to having 25 by the end of the year, and I tripled my business profits again. We did close to $2 million in profits last year from it. But then I also got bored, and I'm like, there has to be more to life than just building a sales business, right? And so then I started looking into, well, how do I deploy all the capital I'm bringing in? I spent a lot of money on the business, I spent a lot of money on personal education, but I knew, okay, well, now I have to put it into assets. I have to get it out of the business because business goes up and down all the time. And so, even though I was selling real estate, single family homes, I never believed in it as an investment vehicle. I felt like there are better opportunities out there. And I also didn't like stocks. I had some money in stocks. I wasn't really a big fan of how it goes up and down based on market sentiment rather than fundamentals. I wasn't really interested in crypto or Bitcoin or any of that other stuff. And so eventually I found out about multifamily. So I started investing passively in multifamily back February of 2021. And then later on, I started actively buying deals. And then I switched over from being, running my sales business to now all I do is just running the multifamily business and expanding that so that we could buy more assets and bring on more investors.
Wow, that's a unique story.
Talked a lot, didn't
Thank you.
I?
I love it. That is amazing how you kept pushing, you and your family kept pushing forward and finding a better way, a better place, right?
It's
I just
great,
love it.
man. And
That's
there's still
amazing.
a lot more room to go. There's still a lot more room to go. And it shifted when I first started, it was all about, hey, what can I do for me and my family? And then later on, it's like at some point you make enough money where it doesn't really change your life anymore. And so then now what motivates me is really impacting other people's lives, like my own employees. I see my own employees, their lives have changed. They've improved. And just to see that really fulfills me. And then also seeing other people that are investing with us and getting the cash flow, getting the depreciation and all that sort of stuff, that also is tremendous. But the last thing for me is just testing my own potential. Like, what can I achieve in my life before I die? Forget the money aspect, but I want to make sure that by the time I'm on my deathbed, I know I've maximized everything I could maximize.
Wow. That's that's uh that's amazing. And I know your people systems work, your systems, and you mentioned data as well. But I wanted to touch on your people hiring system, virtual assistants for some things that can be done by people that aren't in your office. And
Right.
I've benefited from that. You've taught me a lot on that too as well. So thanks again.
Of course.
So, yeah, we've known each other for what, about a year and a half now. So
Yeah.
we're in the same apartment advisory group. So that's been amazing, amazing learning experience. Getting to learn to know people like you.
Yeah, no, and exactly. And in real estate, I've noticed it's a relationship-based business. You can't run it transactionally because, and especially in multifamily, because it's a very small world. Everybody knows each other, right? If you're active enough, you will know everyone in the business, right? Because there's not that many of us in there.
Right. That's right. And the opportunity isn't as, I would say, open as like stocks. You can open an account and start trading stocks tonight, today if you want to, right?
Right. Right.
But real estate investing, I'm sorry, apartment investing in particular, yes, it is more of a team effort, right? Because
Right.
they're typically large enough and enough, what would you say, management skills involved.
Absolutely. And then also a lot of times with these deals, you have to know the sponsor directly for you to be able to invest in those deals, right? And so
Right.
so all the investors, I guess they have a lot of times they have a direct relationship. And then us sponsors, active buyers, we know each other because we're in the same markets. And then we know the brokers because there's not that many brokers that actually sell these deals. It's only a handful in every market that control the whole operation.
Right. Yes. And I wanted to ask you a question about how investing in apartments can help with tax benefits, especially for
Sure.
people that are like high earners and they have
Yeah.
a lot of tax impact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Have you
Yeah,
had some
absolutely.
experience?
I mean, I'll tell you this, when I first started investing, the reason I started looking into multifamily investing originally was because of my CPA, actually. She looked at my tax bill and she's like, boss, this is not good. You need to start investing in things that can actually give you depreciation. And at the time, real estate, I knew real obviously in real estate you can get depreciation, but with single family homes, you can't depreciate as much. And the problem with it is, you could depreciate things, but over 27 and a half years. And if you wanted to get a cost segregation study, it costs almost the same as it would for an apartment complex. It's like whatever, $4,000 to $6,000. And so if you actually do it on every single house you buy, it defeats the benefit of doing the cost segregation study. And so she actually recommended I look into multifamily. First of all, the main reason was because of the tax savings. And I invested a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars last year into multifamily personally. And as a result of that, I've been able to save literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes that I otherwise would have had to pay. And so it's been tremendous. I my only regret is I put a few hundred thousand in the stock market last year, and I just wish I would have put more in real estate.
Oh, same here. Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it took a dip, right? And the real estate just went right on up.
Absolutely,
Yeah. So,
absolutely. And so, I'm not a CPA or anything, but the amount of savings you could have from these investments is unmatched in any other asset class I've looked into.
okay. Would you mind like sharing a little more about like how it impacts or why it's better,
Mhm.
the tax?
Absolutely. So I'm not a CPA, check with your own CPA, but having said that, I'll say this from my understanding, just to kind of protect myself when I say this,
Yeah.
my understanding is that you could offset passive income from these passive investments. So let's say you invest in a deal and then you make whatever you make $100,000 in 3 years when it sells. A lot of that you could write off because of the depreciation if you qualify to receive that depreciation. And then for those that need the depreciation to be used sooner, like maybe you've invested in something passive this year that you've already made money on this year, you could invest in real estate and then be able to write off that income from another passive investment this year as well. And so it's like there are multiple avenues where you could use it. People talk about somebody like Trump, for example, paying $750 in taxes. That's because he's got so much depreciation, he doesn't need to pay taxes anymore. And so that's kind of the thing that people don't realize. It's like it's not just how much money you make, but it's how much money you're able to take home after taxes. Because if I make $1 million in my business, I'm paying 50% on that, basically. If I make $1 million on real estate, I'm keeping almost all of it because the tax penalty on that is very, very minimal.
Right. And I love the passive investment thing that you're touching on slightly here and there. Passive investment, the right one reason apartments are good is because it's a large enough, like there might be 100 or 200 or more units, basically, for example, that many houses like on one lot, on one address, right? So it's a lot easier to manage and it's a lot easier to invest in, for example, 100 different houses, right? On
Oh my God.
on
Could you
one
imagine
investment.
having 200 houses?
Right,
You'd go
right.
crazy.
Right. And so it's a whole lot easier and I would say safer to invest in an apartment deal that has good operators. So, of course, you want to know the people that you're investing with and know that there's good operators to manage your money, right? Like you said, but
Absolutely.
after you have a good operating team, you can safely invest your money in and not have to really work for it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and I've invested passively in other operators deals, and it's nice to get the cash flow and get the depreciation and know that look, I'm spending zero of my time on it and I'm making money from it, versus like let's say you decide to go into fix and flip, or you decide to go into wholesaling, or you decide to go into actively buying your own single family homes. That's basically like a side job. It's not as easy as you might imagine. A lot of people make it seem like it's passive, but in reality, they're spending a lot of time managing the tenants, managing the property management company, dealing with all these random problems that occur where, you've started investing initially thinking it was going to be passive, but it turns out it's now active. And if you actually calculate, this is one of the things I do all the time. It's like, well, how much is my time worth per hour? And if you actually calculate the time you spend on these other investments, it's you actually end up getting less than if you would have just worked more in your own job or in your own business. So, and that's why I decided not to do single family, because I'm like, okay, so I'm making about whatever $500 a month on cash flow, but I would end up spending this much time actually dealing with the tenant, dealing with the property management. I'm actually losing money by making that $500 a month, right? Because I would
Okay.
like just spending an hour is a loss, right? So that's the nice thing about these passive opportunities, is that you get someone who's super experienced like yourself running these deals, managing these properties, and earning the returns and the potential of maximizing the potential of the property without that investor having to actively do anything. They're just kind of choosing the right person to invest in and choosing the right markets, and then everything else is done by other people.
That's amazing, boss. Thank you for sharing everything you did. I wanted to ask one more question from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much you answered it in a lot of different ways. But I just wanted to ask you why you invest in apartments and why you recommend, if you do recommend investing for other people to invest in apartments.
Yeah, I mean, I totally believe in an apartment investing as a method of investing cash, because you look at your other. Here's what you got to do. You got to look at, well, what's the alternative, right? The alternatives are, well, one is you keep money in the bank, and I had money sitting in the bank. You look at inflation and what's going on. If it's at 9%, that means on $1 million you're losing $90,000 a year. It's incredible. It's insane to think about. You look at other things like the stock market, and I had money in the stock market. I sold out of the stock market because I'm not a believer. It goes up and down based on market sentiment. You see companies that are doing really, really well. Their stocks are going down because the value is going down on the stock market, because it's based on emotion. You look at crypto again. In my opinion, there's no tangible value behind it. And this might piss some people off, but that's just my
Yeah.
opinion right now. I haven't seen any tangible value behind these crypto investments. And so then you look at other real estate assets like single family. I think single families are great if you're okay with spending your own time on it, and then knowing that really the value of the house you're buying is going to depend on what interest rates are going to be at and what the comps are going to be at, and you're going to have zero control over the value. And so then you look at other things that really leaves us multifamily, it leaves us industrial, and all that sort of all these commercial assets. And in my opinion, the commercial assets you could control where you invest, what markets you invest in, who you invest with, and then you could see if you like the business plans of these deals, because the value is based on the income. And so if you're buying a property and they have a business plan that is easily doable or viable, where it's like, hey, they could take the income from X to Y, then you get a higher multiple. And so there is a lot more control, and it's not based on just emotions like all these other asset classes. And that's what I like most about it. I'm very analytical. And so I want to be able to say, hey, look, if I do this and this and this and this, and this is what happens with the market, then I expect to sell at XY price, whatever the case is. And so that's what I like about this stuff, is that I have more control over it.
Yeah, and a great thing about it is providing better housing for people, right? For all
Absolutely.
these tenants. It's a
You
very
don't make money on these deals unless you improve the property. And when you improve the property, you're improving the tenants' lives. I mean, I remember not too long ago, years ago, I was a tenant myself, and I remember living in apartments. And I would love to have owners like yourself and like myself that actually go in and make these properties better for people like us. And so it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win-win for the investor. It's a win-win for the tenants. It's a win-win for the community.
It is. Yes. Thank you, boss.
Course.
And anybody that is interested in investing in apartments, please search us and others and see who you feel the best with, whose models, business plans, and models you like the best. And watch us on the next show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.